The crowd outside the metro arena pulsed like a living heartbeat. Fans shouted, vendors hustled, lights flashed, and security guards pushed people into lines that barely moved. It was the biggest fight night of the year, and tension was already thick in the air. But no tension was heavier than the one building at the VIP gate. The moment everything changed. Security guard Harris stood at the entrance like he owned the place. Tall, bulky, chest puffed out, sunglasses on even though the sun was nearly gone. He wasn't protecting people, he was feeding his ego. Barking orders, shoving fans, flexing like he was the star of the show. Then a young woman walked toward him, quiet and alone. Black hoodie, simple jeans, hair tied back, calm expression, no entourage, no attitude, just a soft confidence in the way she moved, steady, controlled, almost graceful. If anyone had been paying attention, they would have sensed something different about her. Something trained, something disciplined. But Harris didn't see any of that. He only saw someone he thought he could push around. VIP entry is for real guests. He snapped before she even reached him. Not random nobodies who print passes at home. The girl stopped, took a breath, and lifted her phone to show him her digital pass. "I'm not trying to cause trouble," she said softly. "I'm supposed to meet someone inside." "Oh, I'm sure you are," Harris interrupted, stepping forward with a mocking smirk. "Let me guess. The president? Maybe the king? Or one of the fighters?" People nearby chuckled. Phones started recording. The girl lowered her gaze, not out of fear but out of patience running thin. She tried to speak again. "I'm just..." "Enough," Harris snapped, grabbing her arm. She flinched, trying to pull away from his tight grip. That's when Harris's ego flared hotter than the arena lights. "I said back off." And without warning, without hesitation, without even caring who was watching, he drove his knee straight into the girl's face. A sickening thud echoed. Her head snapped back. She collapsed to the concrete, hands covering her nose as blood seeped through her fingers. Gasps exploded around them. Someone screamed. Phones flew up. The air froze. But Harris, he just wiped his knee and growled, "Next time, know your place." What he didn't know, what no one there knew, was that the girl lying on the ground was Seagal's daughter, and her father was already on his way. The Metro Arena was a monster that night, a roaring steel giant swallowing thousands of fans who came to witness the biggest fight event in months. Posters of fighters hung from the walls, music vibrated through the corridors, and food stalls filled the air with the smell of popcorn, nachos, and adrenaline. Inside the main hallway, everything looked chaotic but controlled. Staff ran around with headsets, ushers directed guests to their seats, and fans loudly argued about who would win the main event. But at the far end, at the shining VIP entrance lined with rope barriers, chaos wasn't the problem. Ego was. Security guard Harris patrolled the VIP gate like a self-appointed king. His uniform fit too tight around his stomach, and his sunglasses sat crooked on his face. But none of that mattered to him. In his mind, he was the toughest man in the building. He barked orders, shoved people aside, and bragged loudly about how he handled celebrities every weekend. "Back up. VIPs only. Keep that line straight. No pass, no entry, I don't care who you think you are." Even other guards avoided him. They'd seen his temper. They'd seen his power trips. But tonight, he seemed worse than usual. Frustrated, restless, itching for someone to challenge him. And then she appeared. Seagal walked through the crowd quietly, almost blending in. She didn't dress like a celebrity's daughter. No expensive purse, no designer shoes, no group of assistants hovering behind her. Just a black hoodie, neat jeans, and steady footsteps. There was a softness in her expression, but also something trained, controlled, as if every movement was calculated. She slipped through groups of fans effortlessly, her eyes scanning for the VIP entrance. She wasn't nervous. She wasn't lost. She simply moved with the calm confidence of someone who had been in chaotic environments before. But Harris didn't see calm confidence. He only saw simplicity. And to him, simplicity meant weakness. As Maya reached the rope barrier, she spoke politely. "Excuse me. This is the VIP entry, right?" Harris didn't even look at her face at first. He just scoffed and waved a dismissive hand. "VIP is for actual VIPs, not for people who think they're important." Maya blinked, confused for a moment. "I have a pass. It should be on the list." "Yeah?" Harris snapped, finally turning to her. "Let's see this so-called pass." She lifted her phone, showing the digital verification. Harris didn't even examine it properly. He took one glance for half a second and rolled his eyes dramatically. "That's fake." "It isn't," Maya said quietly. "I was invited. I'm supposed to meet." "You're supposed to meet who?" He sneered. "A fighter? A manager? Or are you just hoping to sneak in and get a selfie with someone?" A few people in line snickered. Harris smirked, satisfied with his little performance. Maya lowered her gaze again, breathing slowly through her nose, in, out, controlled. It was the breathing style her father had taught her. Never react in anger. Maintain center, maintain patience. "I'm not trying to cause trouble," she said. "If you check the list under Sieg—" "Hey!" Harris barked loudly, stepping forward. "Don't tell me how to do my job." The sudden volume startled fans nearby. Heads turned, phones lifted. Some people recognized Maya, whispering among themselves, "Isn't that? She looks like—" "No. Can't be." Maya held her ground. She lifted her chin and tried again, calmly. "Sir, please listen. I just need to meet." Harris didn't let her finish. In one aggressive motion, he grabbed her wrist roughly and shoved her back half a step. "You don't get to tell me anything," I said. "Step away from the gate." Maya stumbled, catching herself. Her wrist throbbed under his grip. For a moment, the urge to break free pulsed through her muscles, a technique her father taught her long ago. But she held herself still. She didn't want to hurt anyone. "Harris, stop!" One of the junior guards hissed from behind him. But Harris ignored him. "You think wearing a hoodie gives you attitude?" he growled. "Think you can walk in here like you own the place?" I'm really not trying to argue," Maya said softly. "If you let me explain." "Explain what?" Harris exploded, stepping into her space again. "Explain how you forged a VIP pass. Explain how you're wasting my time. Explain." But Maya wasn't thinking about herself anymore. She was thinking about her father. He trusted her to arrive quietly ahead of him, to avoid attention, to meet the event coordinators before the crowd got overwhelming. She didn't want to ruin that. So she swallowed her frustration and gently said, "Please check the list under." That's when Harris shoved her again and snapped. I said, "Move." Her patience cracked not into anger, but into disappointment. "Harris!" a fan shouted. She didn't do anything. But Harris wasn't listening. Ego had blinded him completely. His hand tightened. His stance widened. His temper boiled. And the moment that would change everything was only seconds away. What no one around her realized yet was this. Maya wasn't a random girl. She wasn't lost. She wasn't lying. She was the daughter of Steven Seagal, a man trained in discipline, silence, and power. But at this moment, she stood alone. And Harris was about to make the biggest mistake of his life. From which country and city are you watching? Tell us in the comments. The air around the VIP gate had turned heavy, the kind of heavy that comes right before a storm. Even the noise of the arena felt distant now, fading under the growing tension between Harris and Maya. A few fans stepped back, forming a half circle. Several phones were already pointed at them, recording every second. Some people whispered warnings, others muttered curses at Harris, and a few simply stared, sensing something was terribly wrong. But Harris didn't sense anything. All he felt was his own inflated authority. All he saw was someone daring to question him. All he heard was his own voice echoing inside his ego. Maya kept her posture controlled. Shoulders squared, chin neutral, breaths steady. She wasn't scared, she was disappointed. She tried one last time, speaking with patience most people would have lost minutes ago. "Sir, please," she said softly. "Just look at the official list. My name is right." Harris snapped. Not just irritated, full eruption. "I don't care what your name is," he shouted, loud enough that even people at the food stands turned their heads. "You're not VIP. You're not special. And you're not getting inside this gate." His voice boomed through the entrance tunnel, bouncing off metal and concrete. Maya exhaled slowly, steadying herself. "I'm not asking for special treatment," she said. "I just need to meet the coordinator inside." "My father." "Oh, here we go," Harris mocked loudly, spreading his arms like he was performing on stage. "Her father. Let me guess, he's famous, right? Or rich? Or some martial arts master who taught you to stay calm?" he said, mimicking air quotes. Some people laughed nervously. Others looked disgusted. A few glanced between Maya and Harris, shaking their heads. Maya lowered her eyes. more out of sadness than fear. "I'm just asking you to." Harris suddenly stepped closer, invading her space. "You know what?" he growled. "I don't like your attitude. You're talking like you own the place." "I'm not." Before she could finish, Harris grabbed her shoulder hard. His grip wasn't just controlling, it was aggressive, meant to dominate. Maya instinctively placed her hand on his wrist, ready to break free with a simple technique her father taught her years ago. She could have done it effortlessly. She could have had him on the ground in 2 seconds. But she didn't. Because she wasn't here to start a fight. She was here for peace, for coordination, for her father's event. "Harris," the younger guard behind him warned again. "Stop it. Let her go." But Harris wasn't listening. His breathing had grown loud, chest rising and falling as if he'd been challenged and needed to win. "Show me who you're meeting," he barked. "Who's so important that you think you can walk in like a princess?" Maya swallowed, then said quietly, "I'm meeting the event coordinator and then my father." Harris smirked. "And who exactly is your father?" Maya hesitated. She didn't like using her father's name as protection. She hated it, actually. She preferred blending in, staying low, moving with kindness like he raised her. But it seemed she had no choice. Before she could answer, a fan in the back muttered, "Wait, she looks like..." Harris cut them off with a raised hand. "Don't tell me," he said dramatically. "Let her say it. Go on. Give us the name. Let's all hear it." Maya opened her mouth to speak, but Harris didn't let her. He shoved her back again, harder this time. She stumbled, catching herself before falling, but her shoulder burned from the impact. People gasped. The younger guard took a step forward but hesitated, knowing Harris could make his life miserable later. "You can't keep pushing people like this," Maya said firmly now. Her patience was thinning, her voice subtly lower. "I'm asking you politely. Please check the list." "Politely?" Harris barked. "You're telling me what to do?" And then it happened. The moment the entire crowd would talk about later. The moment that would go viral within hours. Harris grabbed her hoodie, yanked her forward, and shouted in her face. I said back off. Maya's balance shifted. Her body leaned forward from the pull. The world seemed to freeze for half a second. And then, with zero hesitation, zero restraint, zero thought, Harris lifted his knee and drove it straight into Maya's face. The impact echoed like a hollow crack. Her head snapped back violently. Blood sprayed from her nose. She collapsed to the concrete, her phone sliding several feet away. Gasps erupted everywhere. A woman screamed. Someone cursed loudly. One man shouted, "Are you insane?" Even the younger guard froze, horrified. Maya lay there, eyes squeezed shut, hands pressed to her face as blood dripped through her fingers and onto the cold ground. Her breathing grew shaky, and the pain pulsed through her entire skull. But even then, even bleeding, humiliated, and blinded by pain, she didn't lash out. She didn't attack him. She didn't scream. She whispered through the blood and pain, "You made a very big mistake." Harris scoffed and wiped his knee like he was cleaning dirt, not blood. "Next time," he said coldly. "Know your place." What he didn't know, what no one around him understood yet, was that the girl he needed was not just any girl. She was the daughter of Steven Seagal, and Steven Seagal was only a few minutes away from arriving. The moment Harris's knee struck Maya's face, the world around the VIP entrance seemed to stop breathing. The music inside the arena thudded on, the crowd roared. The announcer hyped the main event, but none of that touched the circle of silence forming around Maya's blood-stained hoodie. For several seconds, nobody moved. Then everything happened at once. A woman near the barrier screamed. Two teenagers backed away, clutching each other. A man cursed loudly and shoved his phone in Harris's direction, recording every second. The younger guard stared at Maya with horror, frozen halfway between wanting to help and being too afraid of defying Harris. Maya lay curled slightly, one hand over her nose, the other pressed to the concrete. Blood dripped from her fingers in slow, heavy drops, staining the ground beneath her. Her breath trembled, but not from fear, from control, from trying to stay calm. Even while pain pulsed through her skull like a hammer, Harris didn't see the control. He only saw vulnerability, and that fed his ego even more. He lifted his chin and barked at the crowd. "Everyone back up. She attacked me first." "You liar," someone shouted from the back. "That's on camera," another yelled. "You need her for no reason," a woman screamed, pointing. Harris spun around, furious. I said, back up. But this time, no one backed up. People were no longer intimidated, they were angry. The younger guard finally moved, stepping toward Maya. We need to get her medical help, he said. Harris shoved him back. Touch her and you're fired. The young guard's face twisted in disgust. Maya slowly pushed herself upright, one hand still covering her bleeding nose. Her eyes watered from the pain, but her expression remained strangely composed, more disappointed than afraid. She whispered, I warned you. A nearby fan whispered to her friend. Wait, she looks familiar. I've seen her somewhere. Her friend nodded slowly. Yeah, same. It's like I've seen her with someone. Harris laughed bitterly. Oh, please. She's not important. She's just another nobody trying to sneak into a VIP event. But the tone in his voice wasn't as steady as before. There was a subtle shake now. A crack in his confidence. A quiet tremor he couldn't hide. Because the crowd wasn't looking at Maya anymore. They were looking past her. Toward the entrance tunnel. A heavy metal thud, 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 echoed from inside the arena hallway. Not hurried footsteps, but slow, controlled, weighted steps, each one deliberate, each one carrying purpose. The kind of footsteps that made people straighten automatically. The kind that made noise fade. The kind that carried an authority deeper than shouting. The young guard stiffened. A woman near the rope barrier put her hand to her mouth. A couple fans slowly lowered their phones without realizing it. Someone's coming, a teenager whispered. Harris rolled his eyes. Yeah? And? Probably some late VIP. Big deal. But a knot of unease formed in his stomach. He could feel it. A shift in the air. A pressure he didn't understand. The footsteps grew louder. Thud, thud, thud. Then the arena doors opened, not gently, but with urgency. 3 event officials rushed out, nearly tripping over each other. Clipboards in hand, badges swinging. Panic written all over their faces. The head official scanned the crowd, spotted Maya on the ground, and let out a horrified gasp. Oh no, Miss Seagal, he stammered loudly. The entire crowd jolted. Harris went pale instantly. He blinked. Once, twice. Seagal, he whispered. Fans whispered urgently. I knew she looked familiar. Oh my God, she's Steven Seagal's daughter. She really was telling the truth. Harris stepped back like someone punched the air out of him. His face drained of color. His hands trembled. No, he muttered. No, that can't be. But it was too late. The crowd suddenly parted like water dividing around a ship. The footsteps grew closer. The pressure intensified. Silence spread like wildfire. And then, he appeared. Steven Seagal walked through the arena tunnel tall, calm, carrying the heavy presence of a man who didn't need to raise his voice to command respect. His eyes were cold, focused, scanning the scene with the sharp precision of someone trained to notice danger before it happens. He saw the blood on the ground. He saw Maya clutching her face. He saw Harris standing frozen. And he kept walking. The crowd didn't speak. They didn't breathe. Every eye was locked on the man whose legend carried more weight than any guard's ego. Steven didn't shout. He didn't rush. He didn't break his calm. He stopped right beside his daughter. Maya looked up at him through blurry eyes. And in the softest, weakest voice she had spoken all night, she said, Dad. I tried. I really tried. Steven Seagal turned his head toward Harris, and with a voice quieter than a whisper, but colder than steel, he said, Tell me exactly what you just did. Harris froze in place as Steven Seagal's calm, commanding presence filled the VIP entrance. The arena's chaos faded into nothingness. Even the music and chatter seemed to pause, replaced by a tense, electric silence. Every single person near the gate felt it, the shift from fear to awe. From disrespect to realization. Harris opened his mouth, trying to speak. But no words came out. His voice cracked under the weight of dread, his usual swagger gone in an instant. Steven's eyes didn't leave him. Cold, calculating, piercing. Every tiny muscle in Harris's body felt exposed, as though Steven could see straight through to his thoughts. And he could. Do you know who this is? Steven asked quietly, his voice carrying more force than any shout could. It wasn't loud. It didn't need to be. Harris shivered. Maya struggled to sit up, blood still running down her nose, her black hoodie now marked with red streaks. She looked at her father, hoping his calmness would protect her from the shock she felt, not just from the pain in her face, but from the horror of seeing a man she didn't even know act with such reckless cruelty. Harris's knees buckled slightly as realization slowly dawned. You're Steven Seagal? He stammered. Yes, Steven replied, unflinching. And this young woman is my daughter. Gasps erupted. Phones were held higher. Whispers ran through the crowd like wildfire. No way. That's Seagal's daughter. Holy. The guy on the ground is the master himself? She didn't lie. She wasn't lying. The event officials, still clutching clipboards, rushed forward. Sir, we've been waiting for you. Everything is ready. But the words almost caught in their throats as they saw Harris frozen in disbelief. Harris's eyes darted to the recording phones, then back to Maya, then back to Steven. His voice, which had been full of arrogance and bluster just minutes ago, now trembled. I didn't know. You didn't know, Steven said softly. Almost a whisper, but every syllable landed like a hammer. That's the problem. You never know. And that's why you should always act with respect, not with ego. The crowd murmured, leaning in to listen. Even fans who hadn't seen the first altercation now understood what had happened. Harris had humiliated a child, and now, the truth had flipped everything on its head. The arena doors opened wider, and more officials stepped out carrying documents, event schedules, and identification badges. They confirmed what everyone was now realizing. Steven wasn't just attending. He was here as a security consultant and special guest for the night's event, meaning he had authority over the arena staff, including Harris. Harris's face drained of color. He could feel every eye on him, every judgment silently carving into him. The whispers of the crowd became louder. You mean she's Seagal's daughter? That's impossible, he spluttered. No, Steven replied calmly, his voice even but deadly in its control. It's very possible, and very real. He took a single step closer, his presence overwhelming Harris like gravity. You attacked her. You humiliated her. And now, you will face the consequences. Maya, still seated on the ground, looked up at her father. Despite the blood and the pain, there was a spark of pride in her eyes. She had stayed calm. She had controlled herself. And now, justice was about to follow. One of the officials stepped forward, holding a clipboard. Sir, Harris will need to be removed immediately. We'll handle everything. But, given the circumstances, Steven nodded. Good, do it. Harris swallowed hard. He wanted to run, to escape, but his body felt frozen. He realized that the fear he had ignored in the faces of others had finally caught up with him, and this was someone who didn't need to raise a hand to command obedience. The whispers in the crowd became louder, filled with outrage and fascination. Phones were raised to record the moment, capturing the absolute humiliation of Harris in real time. Some fans muttered, "He's going down. He had it coming," while others simply stared in shock. Steven turned his attention back to Maya. Are you all right? He asked softly. I'm fine, she whispered, voice trembling slightly. Thank you for coming. He smiled faintly, placing a hand on her shoulder. You handled it better than most. Calm, discipline, control. That's strength. And then his gaze returned to Harris. Remember this moment. Remember how you treated someone without respect. Remember that actions have consequences, sometimes immediate, sometimes delayed, but they always catch up with you. Harris sank to his knees, trembling. Sweat ran down his temple. Words failed him. He realized the gravity of his mistake, the full extent of the humiliation, the exposure, and the lesson he had just received. The crowd remained silent, watching. They knew they were witnessing something extraordinary, not just a confrontation, but a reversal of power. A moment of justice delivered without violence, without chaos, yet more powerful than any shouting match could ever be. Maya finally stood, supported by her father, still bleeding, but dignified. Harris remained kneeling, and the arena officials gently guided him away, his career as a security guard effectively ending in that single moment. Steven's calm presence lingered in the air, a silent reminder that real power doesn't need to shout, and true respect is earned, not assumed. The revelation had been complete. The ego had been shattered. The lesson was clear, and the crowd would never forget it. Harris's knees dug into the cold arena floor, but the weight pressing down on him wasn't just gravity. It was humiliation, shock, and the sudden, inescapable understanding that he had crossed a line he would never recover from. Every whisper from the crowd, every pointing finger, Every recording phone pressed the truth into him. He had just assaulted the wrong person. Steven Seagal's eyes never left him. Calm, cold, precise. The kind of gaze that stripped away pretense and ego alike. Harris couldn't breathe properly. He wanted to apologize, to explain, to plead, but all he could do was tremble. I didn't know," he stammered, voice breaking. I didn't know who she was. I didn't mean." "That's the problem," Steven said softly, almost a whisper, but it carried through the tense silence like a knife. "You didn't know, and yet you acted with arrogance. You didn't treat someone with the respect they deserved, and now you see why that matters." Harris tried to speak again, but Steven raised a single hand, stopping him before he could make it worse. The silence that followed was deafening. Around them, the crowd held its collective breath, waiting, watching, understanding that this was more than punishment. This was a lesson. Maya slowly rose to her feet. Her hoodie stained with blood, her nose tender and throbbing. But there was a light in her eyes that Harris would never forget, a combination of dignity, resilience, and calm authority inherited from her father. "Are you all right?" Steven asked, kneeling slightly to meet her gaze. "I'm okay," Maya said softly. "It hurt, but I stayed calm. I did what you taught me." He nodded, a faint smile touching his lips. "And that is why you are stronger than most. You controlled your reaction. You didn't stoop to anger. That is discipline. That is real strength." Harris, meanwhile, could barely move. The arena officials had surrounded him, guiding him gently but firmly away from the crowd. He realized that his career as a security guard, at least in this place, was over. The humiliation would not fade. Every eye in the arena had witnessed it. Every phone had recorded it. And it wasn't just a professional failure, it was a moral one. Steven stood, brushing past the officials who had guided Harris away. The crowd instinctively parted as he moved. He approached Maya fully, placing a gentle hand on her shoulder. "You handled yourself well," he said. "Not just with him, but with everyone around you. You kept your composure. You kept respect. And that matters more than proving yourself to someone who doesn't deserve it." Maya looked up at him, a small smile breaking through the pain. "Thank you, Dad. I wanted to stay calm, for you, and for myself." Steven nodded. "Exactly. Remember, power is silent. Respect is earned, and patience is the truest form of strength." He then turned to the old arena clerk who had quietly helped guide Maya to the gate. The only person who had stayed respectful despite the chaos. "You," he said softly, pointing to the clerk. "From today, you will handle VIP security here. You have shown the right attitude, the right judgment. You are trusted." The clerk's jaw dropped. He hadn't expected recognition, let alone a promotion. But Steven's nod was enough. The weight of authority, calm, and silent approval gave him the confidence he had never had. Maya stepped closer to her father. "Do we leave him like that?" she asked softly, glancing at Harris, who had been led several steps away, still kneeling. Steven shook his head slowly. "No, justice doesn't always mean anger. It means correction. He will learn. And more importantly, others will remember what happens when arrogance meets reality." The arena staff began restoring order. Phones were slowly lowered, murmurs continued. But the tension had shifted. Harris had been exposed. The lesson was clear, and the respect, earned silently, calmly, had been demonstrated by both father and daughter. Maya adjusted her hoodie, blood still staining the fabric, and looked at her father with pride and relief. "I did what I could." "You did more than that," Steven said. "You showed the world that real strength is not in striking first, or shouting louder, or bending people to your ego. True strength is in patience, control, and respect, even in the face of ignorance and cruelty." Harris would carry the memory of this night forever, not just because of the pain he caused and received, but because he had been humbled in front of everyone. The lesson was silent, but deafening. The power was quiet, but absolute. And as Steven and Maya walked away, leaving behind the chaos of the arena and the stunned whispers of the crowd, one truth remained. Respect is not for the powerful, it is for everyone. And one day, those you underestimate might be the ones standing above you. The arena slowly returned to normal. But for those who had witnessed it, the lesson would never be forgotten. The arena had slowly returned to its normal rhythm. The crowd resumed cheering for the fighters. The lights danced across the walls, and vendors called out to latecomers. But for those who had witnessed the events at the VIP gate, nothing would ever feel ordinary again. People whispered among themselves, replaying the scene in their minds. The security guard, Harris, kneeling, trembling, humiliated before everyone. The quiet, dignified girl, who had endured pain without retaliating. And the man who had entered with calm authority, whose presence alone demanded respect. Steven Seagal. It wasn't just a story about violence or celebrity. It was a story about respect, about how every action, no matter how small or seemingly inconsequential, leaves an imprint. Harris had acted with arrogance, thinking the world revolved around him. He had assumed that power was measured by dominance, by physical intimidation, by ego. But real power, real strength, it had nothing to do with loud voices or aggression. It lived in quiet discipline, in measured patience, in the ability to control one's impulses, even when provoked. That strength had been embodied by Maya, the young woman who had kept her composure despite being physically assaulted. And it had been embodied by her father, who had chosen not to escalate the situation, but to correct it with calm authority and undeniable presence. Steven turned to his daughter as they walked away from the scene. "Remember this moment," he said softly, his voice low but full of gravity. "Respect isn't about wealth, fame, or power. It's about how you treat people when no one is watching. It's how you act when you have a choice to do wrong or right." Maya nodded, taking in the lesson fully. "I understand, Dad. You taught me to control myself, and I tried to follow it, even when it hurt." "That's exactly it," he replied. "Pain, humiliation, and challenges are tests. How you respond defines your character, not the other person's behavior." The arena staff had restored order, but whispers continued. Phones recorded every detail. Clips would go online, and soon the story of the incident, the arrogance, the discipline, and the ultimate reversal of power would be shared thousands of times. But more important than viral attention was the lesson for everyone present. True respect and humility always leave a mark stronger than fear or aggression ever could. Even Harris, now guided quietly by officials out of the VIP area, would carry the lesson. The public humiliation was harsh, yes, but the deeper impact was internal. He had learned that ego could blind judgment, that aggression had consequences, and that one could never assume authority granted immunity from accountability. For the crowd, the lesson was immediate and unforgettable. One fan whispered to another, "You see, that's real power. Not yelling, not pushing people around, calm, controlled strength." Another added, "Yeah, humility beats arrogance every single time." Steven looked back one last time toward the arena floor, then turned to his daughter. "Always remember this, Maya. Respect everyone, because one day, the person you underestimate might be the one holding the keys to your future, or the one deciding your fate." Maya smiled faintly, blood still on her hoodie, bruised but standing tall. "I will, Dad. I promise." The lesson was clear. Respect is earned, not assumed. It doesn't come from titles, fame, or brute strength. It comes from consistent, quiet discipline, from understanding others, and from acting with integrity even when nobody is watching. And for those watching this story unfold, the message is simple. Your actions matter, your patience matters, and the way you treat others in public or in private defines who you are. So here's the question for everyone reading this story. Type respect in the comments if you believe humility is the greatest form of strength. Share where you're watching from, because every kind soul watching today is part of this lesson. Remember, the world may never hand you a reminder like Maya and her father did, but every day gives you a chance to act with integrity, to show kindness, and to earn respect quietly. True power is silent. True respect is earned. And those who act with arrogance and cruelty will always be reminded sooner or later that actions have consequences. The arena continued buzzing with energy from the fight night, but in the minds of everyone who had witnessed it, one scene stood immortal. The lesson in humility, the calm authority of a master, and the quiet courage of a daughter who proved that patience and respect always triumph over arrogance.